Hey everyone, let's discuss brain fog, something I've been so fortunate to suffer from myself. And thankfully, I've learned a lot about what one can do for brain fog. And we can organize brain fog really into 4 causes, and they all have kind of slightly different characteristics. So let's detail these and hopefully thus equip you with an understanding of where your brain fog might be coming from. And that is the first step in resolving it. Welcome to Dr. Ruscio Radio, providing practical, science-based insights into health, exploring the importance of nutrition, lifestyle, and gut health through conversations with experts, research reviews, and personal stories. We break through the bias and the noise to bring you simple, trustworthy information that matters. Brain fog, if you've had it, you know it. You can describe it as a number of things. A challenge with word recall, fuzzy or foggy thinking, an inability to remember certain details, to remember where you're going, perhaps feeling a little bit incoordinated, or just otherwise sort of fatigued. Now, thankfully, there is more study being done on this entity so that when someone goes to a doctor's office and says, I have brain fog, the doctor can say, oh, okay, this is actually a thing that is understood, studied, and we can do XYZ about it. But in short, you feel mentally like you're not at your sharpest. And it can be a little bit different from person to person, but there's this general haze, this general impairment of your cognition. So then this begs the question, what causes brain fog? And this is where the 4 components come in. And they are lifestyle, nutritional, hormonal, and gut health. So let's outline each one of these so you can identify if this might be you. Regarding lifestyle, any conversation on brain health would not be complete unless we discussed either insufficient or poor sleep. Part of the reason why sleep is so important is twofold. One, you have to clear metabolic byproducts out of the brain so they don't build up and become toxic. And also, sleep helps with inflammation and a reduction of oxidative stress. So it's probably not surprising that a 2023 observational study, pretty large, almost 30,000 people, found that sleeping less than 6 hours or more than 9 hours was associated with a decrease in brain volume and a decrease in cognitive function, so memory, reaction time, reasoning, and logic. By the way, please comment and subscribe. We will be doing a follow-up video detailing the treatments for brain fog, so make sure to subscribe in order to catch that. Outside of sleep, there's also stress. One of the things that we're understanding is quite important regarding stress or the appropriate amount of stress is how stress impacts this region of the brain known as the limbic system. And when this part of your brain is overactive, it directly correlates with a decrease in cognitive function. In fact, we have some pretty elegant studies that have shown in people who are under a lot of stress, they actually have an overactivation through functional MRI scans of the brain. And you see this region, the limbic region, whether it be the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, or the amygdala, these regions of the brain are overactive, and this directly correlates with poor cognitive function, which is likely why a 2023 review paper quoted, stressful life factors can act as a contributor to brain fog. For example, financial, familial, or work stressors can cause rumination and depressive symptoms that affect cognitive function. Now, there's also good news here. Firstly, if there are things you can do to mitigate a stressor, obviously do so. However, some of these things will be outside of your control. So then it begs the question, well, what can you do to dampen the effects of these stressors that you may not be able to change? And this, again, is where time in nature is such a powerful intervention. To quote a 2021 review paper, we found evidence for an association between nature exposure and improved cognitive function, brain activity, blood pressure, mental health, physical activity, and sleep. Exposure to nature or outdoor environments may reduce the negative effects of stress. In fact, the research here regarding time in nature is so compelling that I'm starting to feel It might even be better than meditation, especially for those of you who have a stressor or multiple stressors and you're trying to find a way to buffer. One of the things I've heard in our consulting practice is I try to meditate, but I keep thinking about, my boss, this, relationship stressor, whatever it is. So, okay, point taken, right? For some people, meditation can help. Certainly go for it. However, if you find, like this last study commented, that you ruminate, you can't get your mind off of those things, well, this is where walking and doing so in nature can be very powerful. We do know that walking is a way that the body and the brain specifically processes information and stressors. And along with that, doing so in nature, whether it be a park, woods, a beach, a lake, can all help reduce that activation of the limbic system and correlate with better cognitive function and also well-being, like scores of energy, depression, and anxiety. So an easy one that you can do is take some time in nature if you feel like you're stressed. Another important component here is inactivity. It's been documented that when you're sedentary, your brain actually shrinks over time. And this is in part because you have less circulation to the brain, and you also have less production of certain hormones like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is AKA'd as Miracle-Gro for the brain. And this is likely why evidence has shown that in people who are sedentary, who then start exercising, you actually see an improvement in brain volume over time. In fact, that's what this slide is depicting. You're seeing two groups of people who had the volume of their hippocampus, part of the limbic system, monitored over time. Those who maintained a sedentary lifestyle saw shrinkage of the hippocampus. Those who started exercising saw an improvement, a growth of this area of the brain. And this correlated with improved memory. And I just want to make sure to slip in this quote. Our results demonstrate that the size of the hippocampus is modifiable in late adulthood, and that moderate intensity aerobic exercise is effective at reversing volume loss. And by the way, the same thing, preservation of volume of the brain, has been demonstrated for any type of exercise. This one study happened to recommend aerobic, but again, it's been demonstrated for multiple types of exercise. So don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good and start any sort of activity. This will help preserve your brain volume. You want to have a brain that doesn't atrophy, obviously. You want to have a robust brain, but you also don't want to have overactivation of the limbic system. So mitigating stress will prevent overactivation, and then exercise will help you maintain healthy volume of your brain. If you're not active and you have brain fog, get moving. And if you have a lot of stress, then get moving in nature. Okay, so now point 2 is nutritional. And within this, there's a couple components. One obvious but worth mentioning is overconsumption of highly processed foods. And I'll give you some specifics in terms of how much is the tolerable amount in a moment. On the other side of the argument would be overly restrictive dieting. So you're going too hard, vegan or paleo or whatever it is, and this can also be problematic. As it pertains to processed food, one of the main problems with processed foods is they're low in nutrients and they're high in calories, or they lead you to overconsume. Therefore, you become hyper or excessive in your caloric intake. And this has been documented in multiple studies to lead to brain fog or impaired cognitive function. The reason why I've commented, and thank you to our audience for some of the replies and the comments in YouTube on this, well, what do you mean? Why would you allow any consumption of processed food? I hear that argument. As someone who consults with people who are very fastidious about their health, what happens to some people is they become overly avoidant of food. And so we want to leave a little crack in the door for some indulgences, if you will. Not to say they're good, not to say you should do those, but some people take it too far and end up under eating. I'll come back to that in a moment, but let's go to a 2023 observational study that gives us some specifics in terms of, okay, if I want to eat out, if I want to eat processed food, again, not that you should, but what is the tolerable amount? Well, this study found that, firstly, processed food intake was associated with a 28% faster rate of cognitive decline. They found that it was only a problem when people consumed about 20% or more of their calories from processed food. Bear this in mind. Again, it's not to say that these foods are good, but we want to be realistic rather than idealistic. And if this is something where you want to eat out or due to having a family or what have you, you're strapped for time, not that I'm condoning it, but try to keep your consumption of these foods at under 20% of the food that you eat in a day or in a week. The other side of this coin is being too avoidant, too sort of careful with your diet and leading to under eating. And it has been demonstrated, namely in a 2019 study, that those on restrictive diets did have brain fog. To quote, "Despite their goal of achievement of perfect health, these individuals experienced diminished physical health with symptoms that may be related to the severity of their dietary restriction." So there's a balance here, like with many things. If you're overweight, some restriction to get to a normal weight would be helpful. But if you're at a normal weight and you're too avoidant of food, you might slip into this problem. And we can find evidence that a vegan diet can lead to deficiencies, a gluten-free diet can lead to deficiencies, a paleo diet can lead to deficiencies. It's not to say that any of these diets are bad. It's over-adherence to a diet that can become problematic. In fact, I'm reflecting back on a conversation with Paul Chek from a few years back where we came into this agreement that any value system carried too far can become a vice, right? So just bear this in mind. I think we're all on the same page. Healthy diet. There is such a thing as going too far in that direction for some people and having a menu, so to speak, that's too narrow and leading to deficiencies. One other component of nutrition that we should be aware of is protein intake. A 2022 study looking at over 70,000 individuals and a 20-year follow-up found that increased protein intake was associated with the lower odds of cognitive decline. So remember to eliminate unhealthy foods, but reintroduce the tolerance and aim for maybe 15 to 30 grams of protein with each meal. Keep an eye out for our follow-up video where we will go into more detail about all these recommendations, but I first wanted to do one piece dedicated to the causes to sort of give you this overview. Okay, so we've hit lifestyle regarding stress and inactivity. We've discussed diet and not undereating. Let's talk about hormones. Quoting a 2018 review paper, several studies have found that hormonal fluctuations are one of the key factors that can lead to defects in cognitive function. Now, there's a few different hormones, of course. Low testosterone has been correlated with poor cognitive function in men. Now, this is where the characteristics come in yet again. So if you're a man and you're noticing low libido, erectile dysfunction, hair loss, fatigue, low mood, these could indicate that you have low testosterone. A blood test can help clarify this. And if you see over a few tests that you're always low, or you're sort of weaving in and out of low normal to low, then taking steps to bolster your testosterone levels would be a good idea. Now, there's one simple therapy here that we've discussed in the podcast in the past, or a supplement. Ashwagandha has been shown to increase libido and testosterone levels. Now, there's also female hormones. A 2001 study found that 62% of perimenopausal women reported brain fog-like symptoms. If you're a woman and you're at this perimenopausal transition, bear this in mind, especially if brain fog is a new symptom following that timeline. And this also involves women who are not going into the perimenopausal transition, who just have PMS. Another study found that during the week of menstruation, women with PMS had less brain activation and poor performance on cognitive testing. If you're going into perimenopause and brain fog has started, or if you're noticing at certain times of the month you have brain fog, this could indicate that it's hormonal. And especially if you're noticing PMS, maybe you have long or short cycles, heavy or light bleeding. All of these things help you hone in on what the cause of your brain fog is. And thankfully here, black cohosh has been shown to be effective in ameliorating the entire constellation of female hormone imbalances. And we use a product called Estro Harmony that contains black cohosh and a few other similar herbs. And this is one really great area where herbal medicines are quite effective. And then we should also touch on low thyroid function, specifically being truly hypothyroid. A 2022 observational study did report that 47% of women who were hypothyroid reported brain fog before they got on hormone. I would highly encourage you to view our other video where we outline the criteria for what is hypothyroidism and what is not, because as we've also discussed on the show in the past, 37% of people or higher are on thyroid hormone they don't need because they were inappropriately diagnosed. So it's really important to bear this in mind, that just because you have brain fog and perhaps you're noticing some thinning hair and dry skin does not mean you're hypothyroid. There's very good lab criteria to assess this. This is one area where we have great precision with lab work to diagnose this. And then component 4, gut health. The gut is hugely important for nutrient absorption, of course, and also systemic inflammation. And malabsorption and or gut-derived inflammation have both been correlated with brain fog. One study found that in those with leaky gut, it was associated with impaired cognitive function. And they even followed these people for 12 years. And so it was a pretty compelling time interval in which this was assessed. Other research finding a correlation between IBS, so abdominal pain, discomfort, gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, correlated with impaired memory, attention, and recall. A different study found that 68% of people with SIBO had brain fog. And yet another study found that those with non-celiac gluten sensitivity also reported brain fog. This is a big lever to pull on, and a low FODMAP diet is a great place to start to improve your gut health, especially if you have digestive symptoms, as are probiotics. And again, more details to follow on this in our follow-up video. I briefly wanted to touch on environmental reactivity, most namely mold, and also things like viral reactivation. These are things that can cause brain fog, although they seem to be much more rare. Now, if you notice you feel fine until you come home or you get to work and then you have brain fog, and then shortly after leaving, the brain fog goes away, there could be an environmental component to this. So just keep your feelers out for that. And with the viral reactivation piece, if you hit these 4 points effectively, my observation has been your immune system becomes stronger, and then these latent viruses that most of us have been exposed to stay dormant and don't cause problems via reactivation. So in summary, we've covered some of the symptoms of brain fog, and most importantly, the 4 main causes: lifestyle, including inactivity and stress; nutritional, including overeating or undereating; hormonal, including testosterone, female hormones, and thyroid hormone; and digestive and its impact on nutrient absorption and systemic inflammation. There is a lot you can do to improve these things, and we will follow up with a detailed account of what those are with specific protocols. If you're having brain fog, I feel you. I've had it too. Don't give up. There's a lot you can do. Hopefully, this video helps you take stock of what your cause is so you can move forward on resolving it and improving your brain health. All right, this is Dr. Ruscio. I'll talk to you next time.